data continues to be bad. Second quarter would also most probably see a very serious decline of about 12 to 15%. 72% of the loans are stressed. That means almost entire banking sector's book is under stress. So this is a very serious situation.
If I want your overview on our macroeconomic condition, especially in the context of increasing fiscal deficit and decreasing government expenditure, so we are in a very bad shape.
So data continues to be poor, no doubt. And the first quarter was very bad. It received the GDP declined by about 25% in that. Second quarter would also most probably see a very serious decline of about 12 to 15%. Now the unlock process is getting more or less over. Even in third quarter, you would see probably a decline of about 5 to 7% in GDP. It's only in the fourth quarter where I see a more normalization equal to last year. The data continues to tell us that the situation on the economy is still quite bad, and we can get back to the 1920 level in 21-22 if we get our act together. And the growth momentum which India needed seems to have sort of somewhat suffered, or not somewhat, it's very drastically suffered. We're going to see this kind of decline or a negative growth for the first time in 40 years. A 10% contraction is unprecedented. It's extremely severe.
So in that situation, why is not government coming up with any stimulus package, and even government spendings are going down?
So the government did come up with some sort of relief or support measure right in the month of March, and then it was extended later on. So this Jan Dhan account, 5 kg of free ration and things like that. That kind of support, which is basically to keep your body and soul together for the weakest section of that has been given. But that's not sufficient. There are three kind of measures which I always thought the government needed to take. One is to provide to the labor. We have about 40 crore labor in the country. Their income loss was substantial. They had reduced the consumption because they didn't have the income, and therefore you need to provide support to them. The other one is this: there are 8 crore odd MSMEs, other businesses in the country. Those businesses which have got sort of mortally injured, they need to get some assistance to come back. And the last one is that the government, in such times when the demand is down, you expand the works, public works, and you expand the capital expenditure, infra work and all. So this kind of the stimulus was needed. So the revenue will suffer massively. 6 to 7 lakh crore of losses are going to be there on the revenue side. But if expenditure you don't expand and you maintain more or less the last year's expenditure, then still you would have the fiscal deficit of 3.5% to 4% more than what was budgeted.
So if expenditure is not increasing and government has decided not to go for additional borrowing, then are we not in a really tight spot where the bare minimum recovery is also not visible?
See, my sense is that the government would have to increase borrowings. The kind of shortfall we are seeing on the revenue side alone, the additional 4 lakh crore of borrowings which the government announced in May will not be sufficient to take care of the revenue shortfall.
Do you think the next stimulus will not be before December? Is that not late?
So I see 80 to 85% of the economy coming back to the normal. It doesn't perhaps need much of the assistance. So, but for the remaining 15-20%, there was that need of the stimulus. And if you don't give it, then you are actually contributing to perpetuation of the contraction for longer period. I think the time was there. It's moving away fast. If it is to be given, it should be given now.
So basically, is it the confidence in the 80-85% of the economy and Indian people that is making the government complacent and not really go for the kill and revive the animal spirit, which brings us out of poverty?
All other countries, if you study their stimulus package, it's to provide to the private industry. We have been reluctant to do it. It might also be a reluctance in 2008-9 when the stimulus was given. There was a massive bout of inflation. Though I don't see inflation coming to us in the current situation.
You are anticipating much deeper stress in the banking space.
Bad news is already there. Mm-hmm. When the economy contracts by 10%, when 20% of your businesses are shuttered even now, it has to be bad.
Then Mr. K.V. Kamath committee report came in and they were selective about certain sectors, but still there are no takers for restructuring. What does that tell us?
The Kamath committee, if I remember correctly, said about 72% of the loans as stressed loans. Now that's a very serious situation. If 72% of the loans are stressed, that means almost entire banking sector's book is under stress. So my sense is that the loans which are very necessary, the credit which is very necessary to keep the economy grow, it has got virtually stalled. There is no growth in credit. So there is credit averseness from the lender side. There is credit averseness from the borrower side because they are not sure whether they can make good returns out of the investment.
Once inflation is out of control, there is a political cost. So look at only inflation data. Don't worry about other data.
That's true to my mind also. The economic performance and the electoral performances have not coincided necessarily. Economic performance should be helping in electoral performance. But it's not necessarily connected in one-to-one kind of relationship.
Some reports from CAG were surprising in that context, talking about GST money putting in Consolidated Fund of India, or talking about Rafael offset clauses. The reports were quite candid. How do you interpret that?
CAG has a stellar record. CAG has been making excellent reports. They study the situation very well. And these three reports testify to the institutional strength as it existed in the country. And I think that strength has to be and must be maintained for the greater good of the country.